Alright folks, in this video we're going to do somewhat of a, I won't call it a budget build, budget to intermediate build. Now I've got the Deepcool Matrexx 55 version 3, and you can see I only have one case fan in the front. So before we get into this, I am stuck here in Hawaii in self-quarantine. You know, all my stuff is back in my shop in Virginia, and we do not have access to that. So I had to beg, borrow, or steal some of the components to get this thing working. So we've got one fan in the front. Sadly, we don't have a rear fan for this build, and we don't have any top fans, but I wanted to get this thing going. And really the reason for making this is, hey, what does the Matrexx 55 look like with a micro ATX board in it? So you will get an idea of, you know, in my opinion, how poorly this looks with micro ATX in it. It's not really meant for that size motherboard. It's more of an ATX or eATX case. So you'll get an idea of that, and so let's get into it. Alright folks, so we're going to go ahead and put this micro ATX motherboard into the Matrexx 55 version 3, as well as this PV 700 watt power supply. Not the ideal power supply, but considering I came here to Hawaii and I'm in quarantine and left most of my good stuff back home in Virginia, we're you know, I felt more comfortable putting this in the luggage and it getting destroyed than my good EVGA. So it is what it is. So this is just going to be kind of a quick build. I am not going to put all the bells and whistles in this computer. So if you are looking for that, you may want to check somebody else's out, which I hate to send you away to another video, but I'm just going to warn you ahead of time. And we are going to get more parts in. We'll build this up. Eventually there will be a really awesome Noctua CPU cooler in to replace this one. This is the Ryzen 5 3600X. I have a Ryzen 9, if you may have seen from the channel. When I get the Noctua in, we will change those out. So normally I build this on either my my desk back home or the counter in the basement kitchen area. Today though, we're using the couch, right? And I'm under quarantine here in Hawaii. I do have a table. Now let's take a look at the table. So this is my disaster of a table here in the room. You see all kinds of junk food, sanitizers, water, blah blah blah. So we're making the best of it, but I really don't want to move all this stuff, so we're gonna use the couch. All right, so normally, you know, first thing you do is take off the access panels. Okay, I did that in the unboxing video, so I'll spare you from that. So the next thing after that, besides looking at the instructions and getting all the hardware out of the baggie that comes with it, is you would put your heat shield in, right? So we don't have a heat shield because I didn't pack it. It's back in Virginia, some 3,600, 4,000 miles away. So we're going to put this in without it, all right? So the next step to do is just verify that you have the standoffs in the right place. Okay, so we're gonna have to add a few. So you can see I've got one right here, I've got one here, I need one there. Okay, then on the back row, it would appear we need at least one here. So I'm going to do that. We'll get them out of the bags and get that going. Alright, so here's all the hardware it came with. We need some standoffs. There's a few of them in here, and this one actually has black hardware, so I know I need one in here, and I'm going to spare you guys from me putting all the standoffs in, but basically, you know, I'm doing that by hand, right? So other problems that we're going to have, let's turn some light on here. Oops. There we go. I believe it is that guy there. So we'll come in, we'll bring the motherboard in again and just double check that we have spacers hopefully in the right spots. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, so this is gonna it's gonna line up pretty good. All right, so now I'm gonna use the smaller screws here. These guys are number 632s. We'll double check to see if they work. So smarter thing to do is to come in here and we'll take both sets of screws that you would need depending on your case. Okay, so what I would do is basically I'm going to see if which one of these screws in here all the way, right? So you may get a couple threads on the bigger one, and if this is not number 632, you only get a few in. You basically want to be able to have it fasten all the way. So let me pause this and do that. Alright, so it is indeed the smaller screw and not the bigger one that's going to fasten that. Alright, so once again we lost our light. So I don't know what to entitle this video, folks. I'm thinking budget build. So then next we're going to line this up. So I want to get a few threads on the first screw, but I don't want to tighten it all the way down because I want to be able to move this guy around, right? And I've got I actually have another motherboard on order for this case, because this really is not meant for a Ryzen 9. I don't even think it's really meant for Ryzen 5, to be honest with you. Okay, so once we line that up, so magnetic screwdriver or magnetic Phillips head is definitely the way to go here. And then we're going to do the rest of these, okay? So I'll spare you from watching me do that. Now, because of how big this case is, spacious wise, it's not really important whether I do the motherboard or the power supply first. Now, some computers, you really have to actually think about that. This has all kinds of access between the top of the motherboard and the top of the inside of the case. So there will be there's an access area here that I can run my CPU power. There are also these other ones that I can run other connectors around this case as I so choose. Now, this is definitely better with an ATX motherboard. As you can see, aesthetically, right? A big ATX board would look a lot nicer in here. This is kind of not going to look as good. So reasons it won't look as good, we have all these cables and wires that are going to have to feed from this opening all the way up to here. So if this was full ATX, it would be sitting down here and those cables would almost they wouldn't be as visible, we'll say, okay? As well as this being wider, all these cables would come out into this area instead of having this big gap. So micro ATX is not really the way to go. Alright, so we got all the screws into the standoffs that we actually match up with. Looks like I missed one here though, folks. So we've got one more to put in, and then we'll go on to the next step. So this case is nice and big. If you wanted to assemble this stuff inside of the case, not really that big a deal. You know, some people have to build this stuff outside of the case and then put it in. Me personally, a lot of times when I have a big case like this, and part of the reason I like mid towers and full towers is that I can just build it in here, right? Get the motherboard all laid out and then throw some things in here. A lot of times I do not put the solid state in because I want to boot to BIOS, and sometimes, you know, the solid states I have aren't new. I'm using one from another computer, and they don't always want to boot up correctly because it's a different motherboard or some other issue with drivers. So in a lot of cases you won't see a drive installed when I first do these. And it's always actually a good idea to only install one stick of RAM as well, in case you have one bad one. It'll make it easier to troubleshoot. So that said, because I already had this set up and working, it's already been slapped together. Now, and once again, we don't have an I/O shield because it's back in Virginia. So let's go ahead and put the power supply in. Alright, so to put the power supply in, flip the computer over. I've actually got it at a slight angle just for the video. So usually I either have it laying flat on its side, or I will more commonly have it sit upright. Depending on the case, the power supply will line up with the holes easier. So we have to look at the back and verify which one has the odd fastener hole, and it's on the bottom. And looking at our PSU, it's right there. But we want to mount this so the fan's blowing out the bottom. So we'll put it in that way. And we may not actually get... Actually, we will get another fastener, so we'll be okay. So I'm going to use the number 632 screws. And usually your power supply comes with 4 of them. It's this guy right here that's got the, yeah, it's a head shape. Let me see if I can get my light on here. Yeah, it's this guy. So we'll put 4 of those in. I'll spare you from that. Alright, so a couple more fasteners, and we will be on to connecting the power supply to the motherboard. Alright, all 4 fasteners are in. Now we're going to put it back on its side again. Now normally I would have this sitting upright, and I would have it on a nice table that I could walk around on. In this case though, we don't have that where I'm at. So here in quarantine land in Hawaii. So we want our 24 pin connector, and now if this was ATX I would go through for this opening, and I think I still will. I may change it later. This is just going to look really ugly in here. Now other connectors. We know we're going to have a graphics card, and that graphics card is going to end up somewhere in this vicinity. So I'm going to run this through here. And this was a 700 watt. Okay. Now we have our 2x4 CPU connector. This motherboard only needs 1. And so we're going to route that through here. The MOLEDs I'm going to keep in the back because we'll have some fans to connect to those, and we could use 3-pin connectors to the 4-pin on the motherboard. So somewhere in here we have SATA connectors. SATA 3s, there they are. So I will have 1 hard drive on this, and we will we'll probably put it facing this side, I have a feeling, because it's white. It won't look as good on this black background. Alright, so let's flip it back over and I'll make the connections. Alright, so here's our 24 pin connector in on the motherboard. We want to look for that tab there, and we will they usually click in, so I've evidently used this too many times, or the fact it's a cheaper PV one, it didn't work. Now for this guy, I usually have a 2x4 motherboard. I think only one of these will actually work, so let's try these one at a time. Well, that one worked the first time, so we're good. And then this is sitting here waiting for the graphics card. Got one case fan, and this case, in case you don't know, does not come with any case fans, which is really pathetically cheap there, Deepcool. I'm actually disappointed with you. So on our case, we have the intake side and the exhaust side. Okay, so we want to make sure we put this one fan. We only got one fan. We want to make sure we put it in the right way. So normally I would put 3 fans in the front, 2 up top, and 1 in the back, right? This is a, I hate to say it, a budget build, pathetic build. I'm actually embarrassed that I'm making this video, but we don't have all the parts we need, and unfortunately, I need this thing up and running because I'm going nuts with without having a good computer going. So we're gonna go for it. I'll leave the side off of it so it keeps nice and cool. We're gonna put this one in the front. In case you didn't see my other videos, I'm gonna show you how to get the front off of this thing. So we got it on its side. You could put it upside down, whatever works for you. And I'm just gonna come in here and hopefully be able to do that with one hand, right? So some of you will need 2 hands. Luckily, I don't. So from there, all right, we're gonna figure out where we want to put our fan. The best place to do it at first would be to line it up with where your rear fan's gonna go. Okay, so we want to have this blow across the RAM, across the SSD, across the CPU, and out the back. Of course, heat will rise and it's going to go out the top, so we will later take care of that one. So I'm going to put that in there and screw it down with 4 screws, and I will show you what it looks like after I'm done. So if your fan came with them, mine did, but they're back in Virginia, you want to put your rubber pads in between these. That way the rubber will help reduce the vibration. Okay, so between all 4 points of contact at the fasteners, you'd put that rubber in there, and it will help to diminish vibration there in the fan. Also, the wiring of this thing, before you put the fan in, look to see where your openings are going to be. So I've got one right there, and I'm basically running my wire right through that hole there, okay, to connect to a MOLED on the back. Alright, so there's our fan. It's fastened with the 4 screws, and I'm going to put the front cover back on. Want to make sure that we don't pinch our cables that are on it, and nothing coming through, so I'm going to go ahead and pop that back on. So on the back side, grabbed our MOLED. We grabbed our MOLED. I don't know how many times I'm going to shoot this from there, and we have options on our power supply. So we will probably just use one of the rails basically to run to our hard drive that we're going to have over here and to our fan. So we'll do that next. Alright, so inside your bag you have all kinds of zip ties. You would then go ahead and fasten these cables to some of the existing loops throughout here to help clean this up. Alright, so I'm going to skip that part. Eventually I'll do a video on how to do an awesome job as far as routing cables go, but for this video we're just trying to make it a little shorter. So we're going to go ahead and start doing the front connectors. Sorry, I lied. We're going to put this hard drive in here first. So what I'm going to do is, I want it on this side because it's white and this one looks ugly. If I had the black SSD 2.5-inch one, I would put it on the other side because I think it actually looks kind of cool on that side. But we're going to hide it over here, and I'm basically going to go around the other side, put the 4 screws in, and use the connectors that you saw earlier, and have this thing all fastened up. Alright, so on this side you can barely tell there's a hard drive there, and that's what it looks like fastened down. So we will need to connect a SATA 3 power and data cable. Alright, so we have our connections made to the hard drive, so that part is good on this end. And on this end we're going to connect, so on this end we're going to connect to the motherboard. And gotta come in at the right angle. Okay, there you go. So let's go ahead and route our USB 3.0 connector. So we know that it is right there on the motherboard. So this is going to be ugly with the micro ATX board. I will come in from down here and see if I can pop that through there. So we're coming in through that hole, and obviously not ideal to have this cable coming out like that, but what are you gonna do, right? You gotta do what you gotta do. So I don't really like the way that sounded. I don't know if the motherboard's going bad. Alright, so let us... What's our next cable here? I can't even read it, folks. Can you read that? HD audio. So HD audio, always in this corner. And we're going to see if we can go through this opening. And once again, I apologize for the camera angles and all that good stuff, but like I said, I'm not home. I don't have all my awesome fancy camera mounts and backup cameras. Okay, so when you're doing this connection, you've got to watch out for the one that doesn't have a pin. So over here, it's going to be on the top row. Okay, so we're going to come in like this, and voila. Now I have a really nice 4K video of how to do all this stuff with macros and stuff, so make sure you check that out. Hopefully I'll put a link down below. Alright, we've got other stuff, folks. We've got plenty of cables to route, and then a lot of cleanup to do that you will get spared from. Alright, USB 2.0. So let's go look at the motherboard again. USB 2.0, there's 2 sets of them over here. Okay, so we're going to go through the same hole that we just went through. And feeding it through, and voila. Same deal here, we're missing a pin. This time it's in that corner. And looking at these guys, it's in that corner. So we'll line that up. I'll go ahead and take this one, and later we'll route those cables so it looks a little cleaner. Alright, so now we just have the front panel connectors, which this should be a JFP1 here, and we will put them in there. And it looks like, I haven't read the directions, but I would assume this goes into one of the SATA connectors, SATA power, and to power the RGB. Unplug the connector if you use motherboard to control the lighting. I won't be using the motherboard, so this needs to get plugged in. I'll go ahead and do that now so I don't forget it. And eventually I will clean this whole pile of cables up. Alright, so I found a SATA power connector and we plugged that in, so that is good to go. Alright, so now we're going to route all of our panel connectors for power LED, the HDD, and if I ever reset switch, that one as well. Alright, so I've got an awesome video out there that I did for this, but just so you know, in case you don't do these, over on our motherboard is exactly how these are going to be connected. A lot of times they will give you the positive, negative. Certain ones, it doesn't really matter whether you hook it up the right way or the wrong way. These guys, let's see if they're all labeled. Oops. So the power switch is not labeled. However, if you really want to know which side is positive, there's that little triangle, okay? Now this guy here is the HDD LED, and it shows you right here plus minus, okay? And then the power connectors here, power LED, one of these guys is positive and the other is negative. So make sure you line those up correctly. Alright, so I'm going to take a picture of this and include it in the video, and you will be able to see what I'm talking about. So we don't seem to have a reset switch unless I'm missing it, but well, basically you're going to end up with is the positive is on the left side for the connectors we're going to make. If you had a reset switch, it would be opposite of that. Negative would be on the left and positive would be on the right. So since we don't have that. Alright, so the first one I'm looking for is the HDD. It's going to go in the bottom left corner. Alright, so there it is. And if you look at it, you see the, if we can find it, there you go. You see the left cable is the positive one, okay? And if you look at the back, this has the triangle as well. And so that is the left side. So we're going to come in here and connect this to JFP1, and it goes in the first grouping here. Now, like I said, I have a really good video where I do this, and unfortunately I'm not at home, and therefore this is a little more difficult to do here. That pops like that. Alright, now let's go ahead and put the power switch in. So once again, the positive side is the left side. And how do I know that? If I flip it over, you see our triangle. Okay. And this one goes right here. Okay. Now, my least favorite one, and for whatever reason they don't put these together. I kind of understand the other ones, why they're not together, but why this one is not together, I don't understand. Okay, so we want the positive to be on the left side. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to make sure we line these up right. Left side. So I've got to get these to line up right. put them in. Okay, so and voila, those are in. Now I probably should have brought these through this other connector over here, or this other opening. That looks a little sloppy. Just so you know. Alright, so what else do we have, folks? We've got some RGB stuff in the back, but for the most part this thing's ready to go. And we've got RAM. So going through our checklist, you got to have RAM, got to have your CPU installed. Definitely a CPU fan. Got to have, don't forget your thermal paste. Don't have to have the drive right off the bat to get this to boot to BIOS. We do need a graphics card. If this was a 3200G, we would not need it, or 3400G. So that's the last thing I'm going to put in. I'll go ahead and grab the graphics card. So we're going to put RX 5500 in here for now. Alright, to get in there for the graphics card, take the screw out. Take this off. I can't tell you how many of these I've lost. And it appears, unlike the last case I had, these guys are not removable and replaceable. So we've got to pop them out and use cyclic stress to get them to break away. So I'm going to do that. Alright, so they're out of there. So basically what I meant is I bent these back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and eventually the metal fatigues to the point where they break off. Alright, so another reason not to use the micro ATX motherboards, in my opinion, is as I put this graphics card in, I lose my PCI Express 3.0 by 1.0 slot there, and which is a negative because I won't be able to access the internet because I don't have can't fit a Wi-Fi card in there. Alright, so that's in. Very important that you put the screw in on the side, so let's do that. Now the cover that I had, if you're getting ready to seal yours up because you put enough fans in it, go ahead. I'm going to have to order fans, and we will have to finish that later. Now these, of course, are not probably going to line up. Such is life. You may have to put some force on the case to get it for the holes to line up. Deep cool is actually not that bad for this. I actually saw that went in pretty good. So it looks like I'll get the second screw in. One could be enough, and considering I don't have another screw on me, we're gonna have to go with one. Alright, so I'm gonna put the power cable in the back, and I'm gonna test this out first, folks. Oop, there's the power cable. I'm gonna test it out, and then I'm gonna clean it up, and that'll probably be the end of the video. Alright, so moment of truth. Make sure you connect your DVI dual, HDMI, DisplayPort, VGA, whatever, to your monitor, and that aspect is good. So we're going to go ahead and hit power, and voila, there is the RGB light strip, in case you wanted to see it, and also the single fan I have. How hokey that looks. There you go. that angle. Not my best build, folks, but it is a build all the same. So, no signal on this end. Let's see. We've lost our network settings somehow. And so it appears that I have made some kind of mistake. So we'll fix that. Who out there realized that I did not plug the power to the graphics card? Now, if you have a graphics card that doesn't have GPU connector or GPU power connector, you would be good at this point. So I'm going to go supply power to it. Alright, so we've unplugged the computer, and now we are going to hook up our 8-pin power supply. Everything is much easier when you use two hands. Okay, so this thing is going to dangle. We come back and wrap that around to this guy, because nobody wants to see that cable just hanging out there. So we'll come back and clean that up eventually. All right, one last time. Power on. There's the pretty RGB strip, our single fan that we have, and the RAM. All right, so on this side, we should have signal. Oh, there we are, Windows login screen. We're good to go. Thank you for checking out the video. Thanks for checking out my micro ATX build with the Matrexx 55 version 3. And hope you got something out of it. Of course, like I said, this would look a lot better with a full ATX motherboard as far as route and cables go, and also after I clean it up. Once I put the back panel on, it'll look a lot better and won't look like Swiss cheese. There you go, folks.